Hi, I'm Sarah Townsend, professional and legal editor of Property Week. I'm joined at the EcoBuild conference by Bill Hughes, Managing Director of Legal and General Property. Bill, you've talked anecdotally about how sustainability improves the performance of buildings and also the value, the investment performance of buildings. But you've also talked about how it's a lot harder to actually measure that statistically, get empirical evidence for it. Can you flesh out for us exactly why that is? What makes it so hard?
Yeah, the problem with real estate. Am I supposed to be looking at Sarah or the camera? I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry. The problem with real estate, of course, is that every single building is different. Every location is different. So to generalise about anything is always challenging. And when we see the benefits of sustainability by way of improved rental terms, improved rental levels, longer leases, better cap rate, it's always about a specific building which itself doesn't really have any comparable reference point. So it's quite difficult then to tie the features we see by way of positives and say they are in isolation the reason that a building is doing reasonably well. When you're working with a building hands-on, you're working around the asset management attributes and with the tenants, you do know that it's making a positive difference. But to aggregate that together and to make some broad-based statement about that is challenging for the reason I've described, because properties are all different.
How do you know then that it's doing well, even anecdotally?
So when we would start a project, which would be a sustainability project, we'd start with a building in a current situation. Thinking about a building we're working on at the moment, we've got an HQ occupied by a organisation that has some CSR policies in place, 4 years to run on the lease. We're working with them to improve the quality of the building and definitely focus also on the behavioural change that we can deliver through management activities of the building. And working with them, they're about to sign a longer lease with us. So the value of the building to us is going to be significantly improved, and it's all about our sustainability relationship with them.
Okay, so what you've described is that it is, to some extent, occupier-driven, this whole thing. Can you perhaps tell me how much it's occupier-driven, how much it's likely to be driven by market forces in the future? Have people really picked up that there's a business argument for this?
Yeah. Well, I think there's some confusion around the subject, and that's partly because it's complicated. But the way I see things is that ultimately the behaviour of the occupier is what drives value. Will they sign a lease? Will they sign a lease on terms you want? Will they pay a certain rental level? They're also thinking about their own CSR policy or energy, water, waste impacts of being in a building. So if that all works well for them, then you end up with a more stable occupier, you end up with a building that's got a better rating, and therefore you end up with a market in terms of the transactions market that in theory will pay more for that building because it's worth more, or the value of that building will be more resilient to onward depreciation. But don't forget that as buildings age and as leases shorten, there is generally a downward trend in valuation in the capital value of the building. So that's the order in which things I think happen. And again, anecdotally, I know that in the transactions market that is already taking shape in terms of how people pay for buildings, the pricing of buildings, the willingness for people to buy and sell certain sorts of buildings, but hard to generalise about it.
Can you give us a bit of an update on the Ecopass initiative, the IPF, IPD initiative, to try and get some sort of concrete evidence about how this is affecting the value?
So the project is a real positive to the extent that you've got the valuation community working together with the RICS, working together with a range of institutional investors that together make up a huge sample of real estate. And the numbers are being crunched by something called Investment Property Data Bank to then start to describe what's happening around sustainability in property. The next stage, and it hasn't happened yet, is for IPD to have a bank of data that's big enough, reliable enough, and through time chronologically building data so that they can performance attribute, they can make the direct link between the sustainability criteria of a building and its investment performance. That's something that's for the future, but some very good early groundwork's been done.
Okay, so you're setting, at the moment, it's about setting a benchmark, for future years. Is that?
That's how all data measurement exercises start. gather data, and then build more in-depth understanding and knowledge going forward. And in the end, the goal is attribution of sustainability in real estate. It's a year or two off, but we'll get there.